Welcome everybody to this Instagram Live. As I said, my name is Debbie. I do interviews with individuals who are elevating consciousness from all industries and walks of life. And today I have Hannah Falk joining me. She is a parent and child and parent EQ coach. And we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence. And she just told us her story, but it got a little bit cut off. So we were talking about, though, what does emotional intelligence mean to you and how do you teach it?
So emotional intelligence is understanding and recognizing what's happening inside of us before we respond. So, if we're, so that we can use that response towards our benefit. So if we're going to a happy, engagement, we're going to a party and we're feeling happy, then that feeling is going to serve our purpose, which is to be, at a party and have fun. But if we need to do an assignment or homework and we're feeling lazy, that feeling isn't going to support us. So if we know that that's the feeling that we're feeling and we know strategies to help pull ourselves out of that, then we can push ourselves to do the thing that we need to do. So it's about finding where we are so that we can either use it towards our benefit or manage it so that eventually we can get to using it towards our benefit. And sometimes managing means it might take a little bit longer depending on what it is. But it's being in touch with those things. It's being in touch with what's happening inside of you before you respond, so that you're actually really in control instead of your feelings in control of you. So that's what it is in a nutshell. And
and that's not just for kids. I mean, that's something that we all struggle with on a daily basis. Procrastination, doing what we need to do, recognizing how we feel inside, not reacting to the situation as it is, but realizing, how do I feel about it?
Yeah, exactly. There's this quote by this neuroscientist. His name is Antonio Damasio, and he says, we're not thinking machines that feel, we're feeling machines that think. So we feel first, and then we think. We don't, so we make these goals or we decide we're going to do something, and then, our feelings change the way that we act. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot for us to work on. Definitely, as adults, but my focus is for children and now adults, right? Because it's really the only way that children will learn is when the adults around them start to do it too. It's not something you can just tell someone to do and just let them do it. Like, they need to experience it too. It's a social learning that happens. It's social emotional learning. So the way that I teach it, I do one-on-ones with children, and that's pretty customized depending on where they are and where we start. It's different for everyone depending on what parents tell me about their children. I might start them in a different place. I do group sessions where I intake, from different parents and put a curriculum together for that specific group. Or I do courses where I just create a very basic curriculum that takes children through 10 or 12 weeks of curriculum and really teaches them skills that they can use. And I'm always integrating the parents. I'm always giving the parents things to do. I'm like, I send very long emails with a few attachments of like, these are the posters you can put up, these are the resources you have, why don't you practice this at home? Because it really is a culture. It's a culture and it's a practice. It's not just like another class.
Right. It affects the whole way that you kind of approach. It's interesting because I did, the way you described it, I did an interview with a functional medicine doctor, and, he talks about different things that are in terms of his approach to health, like getting enough sleep, not eating until a certain time. And it's not like a diet. It's not like healthy tips. It's more like it becomes like a way of life. A way that you approach is like a whole health kind of way. It sounds like a similar way, but more on the emotional side.
And that would also take into account his practice as well, because emotionally, I need a lot of these practices in order to also emotional, to be able to be focused. If I'm not healthy,
to drink enough water.
Right. All encompassing.
Amazing. So, what would 3 points be that you would tell a family who's maybe interested in starting social emotional learning for their children or learning more about it? What are maybe 3 things you would tell them about getting started with the work?
Well, the first thing I tell people is, and this is where I start, even like when I just where I try to start curriculum unless I see otherwise, is that there's no such thing as a bad feeling. There are unpleasant feelings, right? But they're not
Right.
bad ones, because even anger can be used for good. So,
Right.
so the idea of not judging feelings as they come up. As parents, we don't want to judge the feelings that our children are feeling. If they're angry, they're not bad, they're not manipulative, they're just having a feeling. And same for us, right? So that's the first thing we want people to know, because we judge our feelings. We judge ourselves for we get upset that we're upset.
Right. And we repress them. Like recently, for example, I did a lot of shadow work. And what I realized was that there was a lot of angry feelings that were like, as a child, like you weren't supposed to get angry. You're supposed to be like a nice girl. You were supposed to, be polite. So that anger about different situations was put into the shadow and disassociated from. So somebody could have asked me like, oh, Debbie's not an angry person. She doesn't have anger. But when I really went in and did some shadow work and uncovering, I found that there was, those energies that I had just basically disassociated from, and set aside. And thank God I was like in a place where I was ready to like deal with them.
Yeah.
Actually, situations in my life happened where brought up the anger. And then I said, oh, this doesn't make sense that I'm so angry about this situation. It must be something that happened when I was a child. So I think the work that you do is so incredibly powerful, because you're basically giving kids the tools so that they don't have to go through this kind of work that our generation is doing. They're going to be prepared in a different way.
Yeah. But it always takes the parent to get involved, because if the child knows these things, so if we talk about a growth mindset, or if we talk about how our feelings matter, but then we have parents at home that repress, don't recognize, yell, then it gets confused. So it is, which is recently why I've really started to work with parents and target parents, whereas before I think, I think I also, because of my own, I grew up in a really loving home, and I always say that, but we all a lot of us grew up in loving homes and got wrong messages. And so
right.
Because of the wrong.
Nobody, even if you had a good childhood and you had loving parents, we all, because we're souls here who are here to make certain corrections, we're not here to just, we have things to overcome and things to learn. So it had to come in some way,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. And, so even though it came this way, I think because of that, I didn't want to work with adults for a really long time.
Right.
So something in me changed recently, and I think, I realized that it's a responsibility that it doesn't flow, and it's not within the benefit of the child to only, when I have this information, only, share it with them, when really family needs it too. So I've started creating like content for parents and courses for parents too.
Content for parents and courses for parents. Yes. By the way, if anybody hasn't been to Hannah's Instagram page, it has incredible videos, incredible tips, great quotes, great, really simplified, like in a really simple way that you can just kind of like pick it up and use it in your day. So that's, even I don't have kids, and I go to your page and I get something that I can use for myself, because we're all just big kids.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought about changing my name, like,
right.
But we're all children, so
we're all big kids.
Yeah.
So you can also go there, and there's a link to her website, and there you can find out more about her work. And since we kind of missed the beginning, you can also hear about her story and an international nonprofit that she worked for that really impacted her and brought her into the space where she is. So you can check that out as well. And just I want to just give people some juicy tips that they can use. So parents are on a daily basis. Like I said, I'm not a parent, but I have a lot of nieces, and I have, of course, many people that I've watched children and been around kids, and I myself used to be a teacher. So I know that you're going through a lot of scenarios on a daily basis, whether it's with little children, tantrums, or bigger children in terms of wanting to get their way or wanting certain things. What are some, like, maybe 2 tips that you can give, or can you give examples of scenarios that happen, and how would you take it into a space of social emotional learning? Because oftentimes we just see what happens, and then we react to like this surface story, like the kid wants candy and I don't want to give it to him, but there's always something deeper going on, like something that we can learn. So can you give us some examples maybe of scenarios and how you would take it into a level of learning?
Sure. So one example, and this can happen anytime a child is having a feeling, showing that it can be anger, upset, it can be any situation, and it could be about anything. It could be about somebody taking their toy, it could be about them not getting to go somewhere that they wanted, it could be about them not wanting you to put the seatbelt on because they want someone else to put the seatbelt on, or their ice cream fell on the floor, anything. Frustrated about a test or frustrated about a friend. A really great thing to do that really makes it a teachable moment also for them, but also helps you to connect to them, is to share empathy with them. And this can be hard sometimes for parents when the child is making them feel upset through their behavior or through their feelings. So sometimes the child may be yelling, right, at a parent, and that might be that's disrespectful. But when we focus on that respect, we lose the opportunity to teach the child the emotional intelligence point, which will give us the respect later. The first thing is to empathize and to say to that child, you're crying right now. It seems like you feel upset, or, you are yelling, so you must be really angry, or feeling really angry. And in that moment, you're connecting with the child, and then saying, if they want to hit, so I see you're crying, I see you're upset, but hitting is one of the rules we don't do because it hurts others. So why don't we go take deep breaths together? Why don't we go for a walk? Why don't we play a game, a quiet game, something that will help us to calm down, and then we'll talk about this. And it doesn't mean that we're letting a child get away with something in that moment. It's just when a child is having a big feeling, they're not able to talk to you or rationalize with you. So that big conversation that you want to tell them about how things are, it's not going to be heard. So we need to have that moment. And what this does is that it teaches children, one, crying might mean that I'm upset, or depending on whatever you pointed out, if I'm breaking things, that means I'm angry. Maybe I didn't realize that before. So by saying to that child, wow, you're doing blah, 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 you're doing this action, it seems like you feel this way, they start to understand that their actions are a result of their feelings. Another thing you're letting them know is that it's okay to be upset in that situation, especially if you say something like, I understand, I would be frustrated too, or I would be upset too, right? If we were 3 years old and someone took our toy, we would be upset. So it's okay to say that, and that helps them to see, like, okay, this makes sense. But then by saying, but we don't hit, then you're letting them know. So even though I'm upset, that doesn't give me the right to hurt others. For them calming strategies, so you're also teaching them calming strategies. And then you've also taught them how to empathize. So there's a lot that you learn, that a child can learn from this interaction, especially when you do it. Like, you try to do it as often as you can, because you're teaching them emotional intelligence throughout.
You're teaching them how to recognize their feeling rather than be overcome by it, right? How to become aware of our feelings rather than so they don't control us. I mean, that's like something we all deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why your content, by the way, check out her content, because it's really helpful for adults, and it's put in. Sometimes when you learn things in the way of a child, it makes it easier. Like, it's like, oh yeah, when things are so complicated, it's good to really dive into things and really get deep about awareness and emotional awareness. But sometimes I find like something that's presented for children is like really easy and practical for me to take for myself.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's so helpful. I wanted to ask you 2 tips. So 2 tips that you would give parents, like if you have any. I know we kind of went through a couple, but do you have 2 tips for parents and for children about emotional intelligence?
So for parents, really, it's more about the practice of the parent than it is about what they tell the child. Because if a parent tries to practice this, they're naturally going to pass it on. So, trying to be aware of how we're feeling. That's a big thing. That's one thing that is key about. And another thing is to try to be aware of how we're feeling, and when the feeling that we have isn't really helpful for the situation. And then 2, try to find ways to take care of those feelings that aren't helpful for us in that situation. if, if maybe we're tired, so we need to take care of that. Maybe we're really angry, so we need to talk to somebody. Whatever it is, because if we're feeling anxious,
I love that.
blocked, we're going to yell.
Right.
So really looking at being aware of those feelings and then seeing how we can take care of them, in the moment, but more maintain. Like, how do we take care of our feelings on the off time so that when these feelings come up, they're not as explosive and they don't make us yell or.
Right. Like if the kid really, I mean, it can be really hard in the moment. Like if you feel really triggered by a situation with your kid, really exhausted or upset or angry, disrespected. Like I'm sure that in the moment it's really hard. But what you're saying is not just about, not reacting to that, but finding later how to deal with what the underlying cause was.
Yeah. And
so that you're
yelling, I mean, in retrospect, once it happens, like we don't want to say, okay, well, it's okay to yell at kids, right? But
right.
It's okay because then you can repair and you get to teach them
right.
how to repair it. You get to say to that child, I was really frustrated and I yelled at you. I'm really sorry. That must have been scary.
Right.
Not what I want to do, but I'm also working on my big feelings. So,
right.
So it's not, there's no mistakes, it's really
right.
life practice.
Right. So you think it's helpful sometimes to let your children know that you deal with the same things, like to be vulnerable in that way with your child. Is there a balance with that? Because some people might be worried, they might see me as like, not like the parent or.
So, I mean, you don't want to tell them your deepest, darkest vulnerabilities,
right.
that aren't G or PG, but
right.
within what's in relation to them, yeah.
Right.
It's okay for us to say to them, this, you're yelling right now is really making me upset and it's making me want to yell. So I'm going to.
Right. Right.
And that models it for them. That lets them see live how it works and also that it's not okay to yell.
Right.
So there actually is a teaching of boundaries.
Beautiful. So, if anybody has any questions, we can take any questions. I know we have a few people on now. Any questions? Anybody want to ask Hana anything? Definitely check out her website and her Instagram page. And maybe since we just kind of got cut off in the beginning, Hana, maybe you can just explain again about how you got into this work.
Sure. That was a long one. Basically, it's always.
We can do the short and sweet version.
It's always been my dream. It didn't work. I got into education and traditional education, and it didn't work out for me. And I ended up, connecting with an international nonprofit. I worked with them for many years. I got to teach thousands of children what at that point was called character education. Now we consider social emotional learning. So I worked with children. I took them through 3 years of a curriculum that helped them to understand how to make choices, how the more effort we make, the greater satisfaction we get, how we're all connected and treating each other with kindness. So we did that for 3 years with each child, and then it was an incredible life-changing experience for them and for their parents, because we also created cultures of care within the school. So we would have parent meetings.
And did they do meditations and art therapy and stuff like that? Yeah. You incorporate all of that.
Yeah, we incorporated all.
Beautiful.
So it was really incredible, and it was a dream. So this organization shut down their teaching model, and I've had this unique experience. So I became a children's coach, and then I started integrating different modalities, and mindfulness and neuroscience, which has been really, really cool for kids to learn about their brain. It's amazing when they understand that nothing's wrong with them, it's just their brain. So it's beautiful to bring that in for them. And we still do mindfulness meditation, we play games, we do art projects together, and then for families as well, similar. But also I'm offering a learning circle for parents now, and which we're also a lot of those modalities for them and practices that they can use.
That's amazing. So we don't have any more questions right now, but I wanted to, something came to mind, like, what would you say is like the biggest issue that parents and children come to you with? What do you see most often?
Anger. There's
Anger.
and
You know what? Because I feel like there's a lot of, like, we don't, it's something that none of us, that in society we've been kind of like conditioned not really to feel, huh?
yeah, yeah, we've been,
In a way.
there's actually an incredible book called Permission to Feel.
Right.
And it really hatches that idea of how we haven't been given permission to feel all these years. You know, we've always been told not to make noise or not to react. You know, even sometimes within being trying to be proactive. You know,
Or spiritual.
right?
Yeah.
You know, we don't react, but then we suppress. So
right.
you know, it's when I started to learn about this, I started to realize, like, oh, this is key. This is really key. It's not just to push it. We need to use it. We need to channel it.
Right.
And not.
It's always going to take us into that higher. I mean, always think of things more on like a vibrational, spiritual frequency level. And sometimes when those really strong frequencies come in, they're there so that you can kind of, like a wave, to like ride it to the next level. But if I don't allow the wave to come through, I'm not saying, I mean, obviously I don't think that you teach us either, like take your anger out in like the craziest way, you know, but I'll give yourself a healthy way to feel it.
The pillows have a pillow that they hit if they need. We
right.
build calm spaces, and we make calming rituals, and we do paper ripping, and you know.
Wow, that's incredible. And for parents, maybe screaming in the car when no one's there, getting it out.
Whatever you need.
I've done that before.
It makes me a nice person, so.
Yeah, getting that, allowing that energy to flow. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Hannah. Is there anything else that you feel you want to share with on this live?
Yes, you know, just let's be okay with feelings, and let's let them in, and try to use them, and learn more about them. They can teach us a lot about ourselves. And join my learning circle if you're a parent or a caregiver. I have a learning circle that's starting July 8th. It's gonna be ongoing, but the first session is 5 weeks. And we're going to learn all the basics of how to recognize emotion, why an emotional vocabulary is so important, and how it actually helps us, how the brain and feelings are connected, and why they're so tricky, and you know, different ways to create rituals at home and strategies we can use for ourselves and kids. And I'm going to give out resources, handouts, things people can use on their own or use with children. So I'm trying to give parents what I have, so that they can pass it down to their children. And who knows, maybe just, you know, I love children, but it'd be great to just give it to the parents and let them do it, because they can do a better job than me.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you do. I know that you've impacted like probably thousands of children for many years to come, and really helping the next generation. So you've done a lot of work for all of us. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. So nice to connect.
Okay, lots of love.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you for joining. Okay.